Welcome, everyone, to the HB Global Employee Ownership Podcast Series. We are continuing our mini-series where Bob Whalen, CEO of HB Global, and Stacy Baum, Senior Vice President of People and Culture, will be focused on what it means to scale culture and how the mission, vision, and core values of HB Global will play into that, but also where the rubber meets the road, the behaviors that support that, how being an ESOP supports that, and more. Today, specifically, they're going to be talking about how being an ESOP supports our mission, vision, and values, what that means for employee owners, and the long-term view. Before we get started, we just have a few housekeeping items. We recognize that this podcast is available to the general public, but we just want to say that the views expressed in it are in the context of HB Global and may not apply to broader audiences. With that, Stacy, take it away.
Thanks, Jamie. Hi, Bob.
Good morning.
This time of year is always exciting for us. I think you in particular, because we're gearing up to do our annual employee meetings where we go out, visit with every employee's location, and talk about our ESOP and what the impact has been for the year. Can you talk a little bit about how the ESOP complements our foundation, mission, and vision?
Yeah. First of all, I'm so fired up. I can't wait. We're about a month away from starting, all the employee meetings. And so I'm really excited to do that. I don't think it's any secret that we've had a really good year. And so we'll get to communicate that. But I think the ESOP really reinforces our mission, vision, and core values because it gives us a scorecard to show how we're doing. So it's a scorecard for how the business is doing. It's also a way for us to, in a very concrete way, show what we're sharing with our employees and reinforcing this message that we're all in this together, that every single person in our company has an important job to do and that we can't do it without everybody. And so this will be our 15th year as an ESOP. Our value has gone up 14 of the 15 years. So a little hint for people that are guessing stock price, please pick a price that's higher than what it was last year because it will be higher. But it's really reinforcement that all of this effort that we're putting into what we do is paying dividends, for our employee owners. And everybody knows, for me, it starts with I really believe that when you spend a career with us, that you should be able to retire with your standard of living. We are putting our resources to making that happen. Every decision I make is in the context of we've got to do the right things for a very long time to make that happen. And so, I think the ESOP ties perfectly with our people-focused mission, vision, core values of where we are. And people have heard, I mean, this is just the most exciting time of year for me, and I just can't wait to get out there, in our divisions, and give an update of where we are as a company.
I think that the context around the long term focus is really applicable for ESOP and just our employees in general. I think that's a big part of our leadership role is to focus on what what our plan is to keep going and to continue those returns.
Yeah, so just to take a step back, a retirement is a big goal. We've articulated to our employees we're going to make everybody millionaires. Okay, and so that's going to take a lot of effort over a very long, period of time. And so we need to consistently do the right things year in and year out. Will it always go our way? Just like a sporting event, there's going to be times where it doesn't go our way. We're in basketball season. There's times during the game, where you come up the court and you miss the shot 5 times in a row, and so you go through a dry spell. And we experienced that, after COVID as a business. Our business struggled a little bit, but we kept on doing the right things. We had faith that the future was going to be better, and we kept on plugging along. But if we're going to meet our retirement goals, we are going to need to do it consistently over a very long period of time. And, I think it's also, important to recognize that, when we talk about the long term and doing the right things over the long term, that doesn't discount the fact that what the long term is a bunch of short term results. So we need to produce short-term results, and it's really getting that balance right. There are times where we got to really focus, on what's going on in the short term so we can produce those results as we go along to produce the long run. I think when we talk about making decisions that are good for the short term but are going to be bad for the long term, that's the decisions that we want to avoid. But it
Right.
doesn't take away this need, that we really are disciplined about producing in the short terms, and we've been really successful with that, recently. But we just got to keep on, you know, month in and month out, quarter in, quarter out, year in and year out. We need to do the right things, and if we do that, we will produce what we're trying to produce. And let me just say, we now have employees that have been with us for 25 years. Every single one of those 25-year employees has a balance in the ESOP of over $1 million. We're actually executing on what we said. We have the next big group of employees that will happen 10 years from now. And we're not all the way to $1 million balance for each one of those employees that have been with us for 15 years, but we are well on our way. We are on track. In fact, we're ahead of track of where we need to be, and we just need to keep on plugging away. And my commitment to the team is that we will always make the decisions that we need to make sure we're putting the business in a position so that we can achieve the goals. One of the reasons that I've been so crystal clear with we will do this is, to hold our team accountable. We have a very specific, goal in mind, and we're going to do the things that we need to do to get there.
I think the exciting part of the 15-year milestone for our ESOP is that we have data to support the last 15 years of messaging and to show off the execution and vision of time and consistency builds what we're actually working towards. So I think that's pretty exciting.
I think it's so important that you have real data that you turn to. I mean, early on in this journey, and I think back, to when we did our first major acquisition, which was IT Landis. We basically, went to the Landis brothers and sold them a story of what we were going to do for those employees. And we had nothing to back it up. We had no data, no history. This is what we're going to do. Somehow we convinced them to have trust in us to do that. And now, fast forward, you know, uh, you know, 11 years from that acquisition, and we are well on our way uh, to achieving what we want, to achieve, over the career for our employees. And the reality is the IT Landis employees have significantly more in their ESOP accounts than what we paid for IT Landis 11 years ago. So in a very, very concrete way, we've produced results to live up to what we, really told a story about, 11 years ago. And that's really exciting. It's really exciting, for me. And again, one more reason, why we articulate, where we're going is to hold us accountable to actually produce those results.
Bob, I think, also looking at some exciting things happening, you have a book coming out.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. We have a book coming out. It's going to be released at the end of March, but at the employee meetings that we started in the beginning of March, we'll already have copies. I think the purpose of the book was twofold. First of all, the book is to create awareness for ESOPs. And so for other business owners really to create ESOPs, we really believe in employee ownership. We believe it's good for our society, our communities, and therefore, doing our part to articulate a story of why we believe this is such a great business structure. Not that it's perfect for everybody, but there's a lot of business owners out there that aren't even aware of it that we want to make aware, and we thought this was one good way to do it. The second purpose of the book for me is, again, one more tool to articulate what we are as a business and what things that we have in place to achieve, what we're, after trying to achieve with our business. Again, we try to communicate to our employee owners in a bunch of different formats that fit them. There'll be some that will be interested in reading a book, and we spend a lot of the time in the book talking about, what our culture, what our mission is, what our vision is, how we're going about it. We lay that all out in the book. But it's not the only way that we communicate to our. This podcast is an example. Monthly emails that we send out to our employees are an example. And so we have a bunch of tools that we're using to try to make sure that there is awareness within our employee owners of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it. And so really excited to get the book out there, really, brag on our employee owners and, what they've accomplished, what we have accomplished as a team, over the last 15 years, I think is remarkable. And I'm looking forward to talking about it.
I also think it's one more step at paying it forward, for not just our employees, but other employees across the country, to educate on ESOPs and possibly influence others to make that same decision. So I think that really resonates with who we are as an organization.
Stacy, if I have one core belief, it's the more you give, the more you get. I think that's true of us as individuals. I think it's true of us as a business. I think this is one way that we're giving back, to our communities, to articulate ESOPs and why we think they're so good for the employee owners. And so, really excited to do that. And we really tie that into the whole philosophy of how we go, doing what we do here at HB Global, is because, it's going to pay back. And, was a fun project to do. It was fun to think about the last 15 years and put it all down on paper. So really excited, for it to be out there.
Bob, I've really enjoyed the conversation today. I hope our listeners did as well, around our mission and vision and just what makes us special as HB Global and being a people centric organization. So thank you for the time and discussion today.
Thanks, Stacy.
Thanks, guys. Be sure to check out Bob's new book, Beyond Your Ownership, being released March 31st, 2026. If you have questions for Bob, we'd love to hear them and answer them in future podcasts. Feel free to submit them to eopodcast@hb-global.com, and we'll see you next time.